It's a special time here for Penn State football fans, and that means we need to get special guests. And when we have special guests, we have special shows. Somebody who BlueWhiteIllustrated.com members have been begging us to get here on the show for quite a while now, and that is Josh Pate, the unofficial college football commissioner, here to discuss the latest with everything going on with Penn State football, James Franklin, the coaching search, and to kick it off, of course, we have Sean Fitz, publisher of BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, here to discuss the roundtable, the meeting of the minds. And I forgot to shave, Josh. I apologize. I was going to try and just be you here on camera, but I only got through the top part of it, which I appreciate you blazing that trail for me. This is a new decision for me lately, so I appreciate the you being out there as the trailblazer for that.
Yeah, Fitz, any comment? Are you next?
No, I'm not next. I'm not close, man. I'm 41 years old with a full head of hair, and I don't know how long it's going to last, so I'm keeping that as long as I possibly can. I was going to wear a tight T-shirt, but I haven't shrugged in a while, so I'm not gonna be on your standard here. So
we can't all pull it off. We cannot all pull it off. I understand. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Let's do it.
All right, Josh.
So Fitz, take it away.
Yeah, busy week for us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Busy week every week for you. You are keeping an eye on things from afar, but I know this is one that you've been following for a long time because I think James Franklin was the first coach to host you, right? For one of your on location events. So like there are personal connections there, but there's also professional connections. You know, a lot of guys in that building, and you have kind of been sort of tampering down whether or not James Franklin's job was on the line. Then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, probably 2 weeks later, things kind of blew up. And Sunday, of course, we got the news that James Franklin was fired at Penn State. There's a lot of, offset language, and there's a lot of different storylines that go along with that. But really, from a human aspect, nobody likes to see anybody get fired. But do you think this was a move that Penn State needed to make? This is a Penn State back against the wall type situation. And how do you feel about this whole thing coming down?
Yeah, you mentioned the important word there, human. I am not a Penn State fan, donor. Like, I don't live in the bubble. So I don't have the viewpoint of someone who lives in the bubble. Okay, so I have the human element of a guy that I know and I like lost his job. And it feels like it happened pretty quick. Now, I know there's a whole lot more to the story than that. And I know that it's years and years and years. And Pat talked the other day about how this was not a 3-week decision. But yet, if the last 3 weeks didn't go the way they did, James will still be the head coach today. So I kind of did feel in a way that it was a 3-week decision, but I got what he meant. I understood the context. So after he got fired, I went on our show that night and I said, I just think this is insane. I hate this. And I did the best I could to respect the viewpoint of a Penn State fan, because I get it. I totally understand holding your program to that standard. And I thought Andy Staples did a really good job, actually, of presenting the counterpoint. And the way he put it was obvious. He said, well, the entire book on James had been he wins all the games he's supposed to. He just can't win those couple that he's an underdog in, but that's his place in the world. Number 9, number 10, number 11 coach in the country. But then when he lost the Oregon game, which I think all of us realized was more than just one game, when he lost that one, and then it precipitated also losing games you were supposed to win, well, then what do you have? It's sand running through your fingers. You don't really have what you were holding on to as the means to maintain loyalty to James Franklin, and so he loses his job. I understood that. I looked at it, and we can go many different roads here. I look at it, and I have a base philosophy. This is independent of Penn State. It's independent of James Franklin, independent of whether I know the guy who got fired or not. This is just the way that I view it. Having lived through Mullen at Florida, Malzahn at Auburn, having watched Phil Fulmer at Tennessee when I was a kid, I remember how slam dunk it felt that the right decision was being made to fire a coach that had had a pretty good run, because a place had a lot of money, a lot of prestige. It thought very highly of itself. And so it assumed, well, we'll certainly do better than what we have. And Georgia did. Oregon didn't fire Mario Cristobal, but they arguably did. Certainly Georgia did. Upgraded from Mark Richt. And that's the blueprint. I've had a million Penn State folks hit me with that. And if you do that, great. But if you do that, you are the exception to the rule. The rule is it's really hard to go from already being on rung 8 of the ladder to ascending to rung 9 or 10 by firing the guy that had you on rung 8 and ascending. So that's my entire worldview on college football is I would much prefer not fire a guy, but allow him to go 2.0 on me and demand that from him. You got to change this. You got to change that. You got to do some things differently. But I know what the counterpoint is, Fitz. You can make it if you want to, but the counterpoint is, no, that doesn't apply if the life is sucked out of someone and the life is sucked out of the locker room and it's sucked out of the fan base and all the equity is gone. So I'm kind of sounding like both sides of the debate stage here, only because I'm trying to articulate I understand all the counterpoints. I have a very 50,000-foot worldview on this stuff, and it is firing a coach is always my absolute last resort unless there's scandal or something like that. So if Penn State fans feel that this was absolute last resort territory, it's justified. That's kind of where I stand on it.
Yeah, and you look at the last couple of weeks and you say, okay, you lose to Oregon. It's more of the same story, right? It's more of the big game story, and then you just flush the goodwill with those other 2 games. And I think that that's really where it comes down to is you can push through that Oregon game, and it's probably at 4-21 against top 5 teams or whatever it is. It's probably on the precipice of, okay, well, this is time to go on. But then again, you lose a 34-game winning streak against unranked opponents, and that changes the math significantly, I think. But yeah. You on your show, you played a video of James Franklin walking off the field on last Saturday against Northwestern, and it was something out of a science fiction novel. Just looking into his eyes, looking into the people that were around him, just waterfall coming down on him from the student section through the tunnel and all that kind of stuff. It's just a different place, and at that point, I think he had already kind of departed. You kind of sit there, and I know we talked, when we're talking live, we sit here and we feel like our eyes are 3 inches back in our head, and we're just like looking at everything and trying to process everything. And that was gone at that point. And I agree with you with the big world view of you make this decision for the ability to go from good to great. But the question that I come back to is Penn State that program? Like, is Penn State, I understand they're trying to be Georgia. Is Penn State, when you make this decision, there's a certain amount of hubris that comes with it as a program. Is Penn State that program that can make this leap, regardless of who the next guy is? Can Penn State do that? And it's almost a be careful what you wish for situation, but at the same time, it's just a fascinating development and how this works in the grand scheme of college football and expectations today.
Let me ask you this. So you're on the ground there. You're going to know this better than I am. And this is the guest asking the question now. It's very professional.
I love it.
Do you think when he was post Saturday, driving home, coming to the building Sunday, when he was presented with that information definitively, how do you think it was received? Or like, what kind of intel did you get as to how it was received on his part? Was it just resigned to it? Was it fight back and try and change minds? Like, how did that go down?
I think the fight back and try and change minds happened before that. When you take a look at coming off of, that UCLA game, and hey, UCLA might not be bad. Like that is the craziest thing that's far from the craziest thing to take away from that. But you look back at that UCLA loss, and it's just insane to think about where that team was in the first 4 weeks and where they were against Penn State. But when you go from that to Northwestern, where he gets booed in the opening ceremonies. You introduce all your starters and you introduce him as the starting coach or whatever that means. And he gets booed, and you just kind of feel that around them. And it's not a situation where you felt that around the bleachers, the team or anything like that. But you watch James Franklin for the week leading up to that, and you're like, not that he's coaching for his job, because he was, but it was coaching for sort of wrapping your legacy up in 1 week versus 12 years. And I think that that's the craziest part when you look at James Franklin's tenure here and how solid and how consistent and how I think a lot of programs are envious of where he's at. Then you change it to just, man, boiling that thing down to 15 days from being on game day, talking about how it's the greatest atmosphere in college football, looking very sharp in his blue suit and doing everything that he is exceptional at in terms of communicating to a broad audience that this program is not what you think it is better than what you think it is. And then 15 days later, you get an email from Pat Kraft and say that's it. Not that he did. You get a release from Pat Kraft saying that James Franklin's fired. So, like, yeah, I think it was just a slow burn. I mean, it's like I mean, I don't even know the slogan, but like 15 days feeling like an eternity. And it was a slow march to that day. So I think, yeah, when he got there, he's a realistic person. He is a human being as well, going back to the beginning of our conversation. So, yeah, I'm not sure it surprised him, but you never know the response and feeling that it's going to be until it's, pointing at you saying this is it. And I think that's what got him. He's an emotional guy, always has been an emotional guy. He put a lot into this program to build it to basically his specifications. Like I was in the Lash building today, and there's a sign on the viewing platform above everywhere that nobody really goes anymore, but there's a donation sign there, and it's named after someone. Like these are the little steps that were never there before, just all over the program. Yeah, buildings were named, rooms were named, and things like that. But the stuff that they did to build up this program made it, in a way, his that would never be his because of the lingering everything over top of him, the guys that came before him. So I think that's a really interesting thing, and it's a shot to the heart there. Like, you can lose jobs. There's a lot of college coaches are going to lose jobs at a lot of different places. But when you're there for 12 years, when you're building that everything up, to hear that finality is just it's got to be crushing.
Yeah. I mean, I know we want to push this forward, but one more thing that I was just curious about. Anytime a guy loses his job, it always feels like it's toxic and he'll never come back here because it's really raw. You just rip the Band-Aid off. But we've seen countless examples of guys that, went out on very bad terms and it soured. And in the end, there was a lot of animosity. And then 10 years later, they're participating in 10-year anniversaries for specific teams, and they've got their own suite in the stadium and all this. Do you feel like in time that will be him? And also, do you feel like me? Like, I feel like he is going to get another job and probably succeed to varying degrees, and more professional success in his life will kind of ease any ill will, if he has it, that he has towards Penn State. Like, I feel like in the future, there'll be a whole lot of appreciation, and history will remember him fondly up there. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think history will remember him fondly because you look at his overall record, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And you look at the further you get away from this sort of carnage of the last couple of weeks. And I think that the people will respond correctly in that this is a guy that took over a program that not a ton of people wanted to put in the effort to turn it around, even though Penn State's history stacks up with a lot of really great programs out there, to turn it around and to make it a modern college football program. And yes, I think that he will be recognized for that, but also he's 53 years old. He's going to go get another job. And I know that that's part of the offset language, and maybe you take a year off, maybe you find yourself. I know you and I have talked about UCLA. North Carolina's not out on the board right now, but that's interesting. And there's some other schools that would love to have the consistency that he's been able to bring to Penn State over the last 12 years. So yeah, I think he's going to be back, but I don't think it's going to be quite soon because I think he's still got a lot of coaching left in him. It's kind of on him to say or to see if this was a fire that was lit under him, or if that's just, hey, this game is really difficult. And it's going to be really difficult to win at a UCLA where you're pretty sure which tier you're in the Big Ten. So I'm very interested to see which direction he's going to go to. But I do think he comes back around. I think there's probably a lot of bitterness right now, and I think that that's incredibly justified. And he's not alone in this. He's not the only coach to ever get fired. But you look at how much they've put into that program in the last 12 years. And yes, I absolutely agree that he will be back at some point, but there's some burning that has to be done before then.
Can I jump in here and ask a question? Because you mentioned 50,000-foot view that you have, and I think that's a really great perspective that fans don't necessarily have because they've got their nose directly in the mud on their team. But I love the interactions that have happened in this coaching search. So X name is thrown out there, and then suddenly X coaching staff is having to address these rumors about them being a part of the conversation. And then the fan base comes in and says, well, we're winning. This is a way better program than what Penn State would be. You know, just name them off. Missouri, Indiana, all the teams and all the places where coaches are coming up. For your perspective, and I know we kind of have talked about this a little bit, where is Penn State in that pantheon of schools? What kind of opportunity is this for a coach? And do you think it is, with the right guy, could be a place to get over the hump and be in that top 5 that you were talking about?
So you can win a national championship at Penn State. So that's the most important thing to know. You can win one there. There are 2 ways to answer this question. Like, what caliber of job is this? All right, there's the generic way, which is it's the 5th best job in the Big Ten. If I took a generic head coach based on an aggregation of what they value the most, they're going to say Ohio State's a better job. They're going to say Michigan's a better job. They're going to say Oregon's a better job. We can debate USC, but I think in the aggregate, a lot of guys would value Southern Cal talent and warm weather more. So they would say USC's the better job. Then they would list Penn State 5th. But as important as it is to acknowledge the generic, it's also important to acknowledge you've got to get specific to the candidate that you're chasing. If it's Matt Rule, if it's Matt Campbell, if it's Joe Brady, like whoever is atop the hot board right now, there is a certain coach out there, I'm speaking like generically right now, there's a coach out there that would look at Penn State and say, no, I think that's the 3rd best job in the Big Ten. There's a kind of coach that would say, nope, that's my job. That's the number 1 job in the Big Ten. It's based on what they prioritize. It's based on loyalty. It's based on connection. It's based on what your family wants. Some folks want to live in cold weather and don't mind it. Some folks don't want anything to do with the SEC. Other guys would crawl over broken glass to coach in the SEC at the expense of passing up jobs up north. So there's a very 50,000 foot, we're using that a lot, by the way. There's a very 50,000 foot way of viewing that, but that's not how actual coaching searches happen. Actual coaching searches involve specific candidates. And so it's about what those specific candidates think about your job. And then what kind of guarantees can you give them? What's their vision for what they ultimately want to do? How can you promise them that it's possible to be executed here? Basically just on and on and on that way.
It's always been about some level of investment, right? It's always been about how you can, it used to be the facilities arms race or whatever. And now you're looking at actual investment in dollars in players, and you've got revenue sharing, of course, but you also, the cap on that is, or the cherry on that is going to be what differentiates your roster from the rest of the Big Ten, from the rest of the SEC, whatever it is. So how much, when we're talking about coaching search, because I think this one is still in its infancy, I don't think that there's really much real out there yet. And I think that that's a little bit by design, but also a little bit prisoner of the moment type thing, because there's going to be another 6 weeks or so of this that we're going to talk about. How much of the investment in modern college football matters to the head coach, the GM, the commitment to donating through backers and things like that. And I've got my own opinions on this, but how much of it is the entire package versus just, it used to be, hey, give me the most money. I'm going to come here. I'm going to bring my guys and we're going to coach. Like this is completely different to me.
The investment is more important than the dollar figure, because the investment's going to be year over year. A lot of times dollar figures get dangled out there and it's almost like a one-time spend. When we're negotiating ad deals, I want relationships with the advertisers, because I know it's going to be a year over year spend, and it's probably going to incrementally increase if our return to them is what they want.
So you're saying like if Scott Van Pelt mentions it on Bad Beats or something like that? Is that?
Yeah, even if it's a quick track and not a quick trip, it's just a gas station. It's like soda and Coke in the South. They're synonymous. That's what you want. You want an attitude of investment, I think, is what most guys look for. Like, there's going to be a ton of money available at Penn State. Yes. But there's going to be a ton of money available at the schools that we're going to compete against too. I was talking to a coach like right before we started recording. It's like a G5 coach. So he was saying, you wouldn't believe how dumb my donors are. And they're not stupid people. They're ignorant to the realities of college football. And I said, well, what do you mean? I knew what he was going to say, but I was going to get the story out of him anyway. And he's like, we are not top half of our league in terms of spend and in terms of talent acquisition. But when I go to my donors and I ask for more money, they say, well, why do you need money? We've got rev share. And they don't understand that we're not the only school that has rev share. Yes, we have rev share. Everybody has rev share. So in the net, everybody's still even the way they used to be. It's up to you to spend, but it's so hard to tell people that before you're winning. And then they're looking at you and say, well, if you'll win, then we'll spend. And you look at them and say, you got to spend to win. So anytime you have to get in that kind of mud, you're talking about the wrong job. My point is, you don't have to deal with that at Penn State. At Penn State, there are going to be enough resources. But if anyone ever comes to you and complains that you're not matching the results Ohio State is delivering, for example, can you look back at them and say, well, now that you mention Ohio State, what if I told you this, this, and this that Ryan Day has that I don't have? And again, this is generic. I'm not talking about specifics. If the attitude is, all right, let us know what you need and you got it, that's the attitude you're looking for. Much more so than a dollar figure that's negotiated into a contract. I want to know that that attitude is going to be present. And if it is, then if I'm worth my salt as a coach, I'm going to fill the building with the right people. Like I'm going to find a way to sell Penn State. Penn State's not hard to sell. So I'll find a way to do that. It's just is the attitude of investment there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And it's going to be fascinating to see as coaching salaries sort of, I don't want to say cap, but as coaching salaries go into the same pool of the money on top of that with coordinator salaries. Penn State's got a $3 million defensive coordinator. Penn State's got a very expensive offensive coordinator. And that stuff adds up. So I'm going to be very fascinated to see who the next guy brings in. Speaking of the next guy, I guess people have made it 21 and a half minutes. We really haven't talked candidates. You mentioned Matt Rule. I know that you went on ESPN on Get Up the other day, talked about Matt Campbell. Who fits this job? Because I think we're gonna talk about this for the next couple of weeks, or I guess probably the next 6 weeks. And you're going to look at almost auditions from some guys that, because hey, if you're Penn State, if you're Pat Kraft, you want to bring in Matt Rule. Well, if Matt Rule goes 8-4, that's a tough sell because you just fired a guy that has gone 10-2 the last couple of years and 11-1 last year. So, how are you looking at this job for a fit, and kind of what are the names that have popped out to you? I think we've all talked a little bit about Matt Rule, Marcus Freeman, Eli Drinkwitz, all these guys. I threw Freeman in there just to hear your rant on this one. But what is this job to you, and who really fits it?
I think you have to have a blend of a guy who is a supremely good football coach. Okay, that should be first and foremost. Does the guy know football? Can he coach football at a high level? It sounds so common and so commonsensical, but sometimes it's overlooked. So get me someone who does that. Get me someone who's had to do more with less before. You won't have to deal with that here, but I do want that. I want a guy that, in other words, in his career has had to evaluate his way to the top and has had to develop his way to the top, because that stuff never wears out. That stuff, it never loses its luster being able to do that. Because I think about what Texas A&M's done. Texas A&M nailed their hire with Mike Elko. Elko wasn't like the biggest flashy name, and he got hired in the same cycle as DeBoer. So anytime Bama hires a new coach, that's the spotlight. And Elko just kind of goes to A&M. Here's what A&M knew. A&M knew his reputation. A&M scouted him really well. And people who know Mike Elko know that guy is one of the best evaluators and developers of talent in the world. A&M looked at that and said, if we get those values in our building, which we didn't have under Jimbo, and then we dump a ton of money in his lap, he's going to spend it smartly, but he's going to have money to spend. I think about that kind of guy. That's why while everyone else has been talking about Rule, everyone else has been talking about Marcus Freeman, which until further notice is a pipe dream to me. I'd love to get him if you could get him, but I think it's a pipe dream. Matt Campbell's always been that guy for me. And Matt Campbell has sat there at Iowa State for a while. And if you know Matt, it's not an indictment. It's not for lack of offers that he sat there. He's just not been in any hurry to leave. I think there are a handful of jobs that he may entertain leaving for. I think this is probably one of them. I think about checking those boxes. Okay, that's what I want to hire. I want to take someone like that. If it's Matt Rule, like if Matt Rule fits those parameters for you, so be it. I got no problem with Matt Rule, but I want a guy who kind of blends the ability to be a big spender, but also maintains those blue collar principles of he can evaluate, they can develop, they kind of keep an edge about the program instead of this mentality that we're going to get talent merely because we're going to go outspend. I kind of also want an aura around Penn State where they don't have to match dollar for dollar. There's an attractiveness about the development you're going to get there, the experience you're going to get there, that as long as Penn State, as Meemaw would say, gets within a 9 iron of the offers that the other schools have, Penn State starts attracting talent. I am telling you the reason I've zeroed in on Campbell is because I'm pretty intimately familiar with how they recruit there. I'm intimately familiar with their NIL situation as much as they have one. And I know the discount that kids have gone there to play for under. So those kind of principles are what I'm looking for in a head coach. I don't know how sexy the name Matt Campbell is, and I know other names have gotten more traction there, but like I think a bunch of these jobs are going to come open. Penn State just happens to be the first one. You'll hear Campbell's name come out of my mouth a lot because I think that dude is a superstar waiting to happen at a major program.
Yeah, the ball coach hire, right? You're looking at a guy that can evaluate your way into having a cheaper roster by finding the guys versus having, going out and forced to plug them. In terms of just one more before we get you out of there, you're looking at this job, and James has been so even keel for years. Does energy play a role in this? Does entertainment factor play a role in this? And Penn State's got a $7 million stadium that they're trying to renovate here. How much do these little things play into Pat, or do you think Pat Kraft would have to factor in to this job? I'm not asking you to tell me what Pat Kraft is thinking, but how much do you think those things are going to be what is sort of higher on the checklist for Penn State than some?
By the way, speaking of Pat Kraft, I met the guy once in my life. It was the day I was at practice. I talked to you. It was a couple of months ago. Did you hear he and I go at it off to the side? Were you out there when that happened?
I missed that.
Okay, so Pat Kraft, this was when the rumors started circulating about the Big Ten. Oh, are we going to expand to 26 teams in the playoff and whatnot? And that report had just come out. So I meet Pat, and then we're just standing there talking. James is over there. Greg Kincaid's standing there. Like a lot of guys are standing there. And he wants my thoughts on that. So I told him I hate it. And he actually loved it. Then he started trying to sell me on the merits of it. And then I started shooting back and forth with him. And like our tones got elevated. Now, he and I knew we were just kind of debating. There was nothing wrong. But I saw some nervous energy from the folks to my left and right, like we were about to start fighting. And it was great because I didn't realize that you could hear us from like a practice field away. So that was my only interaction with Pat Kraft. I just thought of that story. And I know you were out there that day, but I couldn't remember if you saw that. So to answer your question that you asked 5 minutes ago, maybe. And that's where I have to respect that I don't know what I don't know. I don't know how much you have to value that when you're hiring the head coach at Penn State. Like to me, there is no better premium of entertainment than winning football games. So I would rather have the most boring, monotonous, cliche-ridden coach imaginable that's going to win me a championship than a showman that's just going to hang 10 wins per year and bring us more of what we already had. So I don't know. Like I'm always the guy who says, hey, I know this is football. It is the entertainment business, though. You don't have 110,000 there just because they want to watch football. Because if it was just football, then all football would attract that. There's a lot of entertainment-based aspect to this, and it's a spectacle and all that. So the answer to your question may be yes. And that may be where a guy like Matt Rule, doing his own podcast, not afraid to do the McAfee shows, not afraid to have a little flash with the substance around the program. Maybe that's part of the merit. Maybe that's part of the appeal there, above and beyond the natural connection that he has to the program, the natural relationship he has with Pat. Maybe that matters. To me, it doesn't matter. It's just an added bonus when you get it. Like Eli Drinkwitz is a name you mentioned. Eli's got that. I think if this Florida job comes open, Eli would be a puzzle piece fit for the Florida job. He's just Steve Spurrier. That's what he is. He's Steve Spurrier waiting to happen. He's a really good offensive mind. He's not afraid to be a burr under the saddle of a lot of other coaches in the SEC. But if that happened in the Big Ten, it had happened in the Big Ten too.
One thing that I have heard from some fans after the last couple of years is touchdowns are fun. And that would be something that I'd like to bring back to Happy Valley on a regular basis. Something we'd like to bring back on a regular basis is Josh Pate. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for the time. And I know that we took a chunk of it. So very busy, man. Thank you. Appreciate you coming on the show today.
I appreciate you having me.
All right, we'll be back with more. We've got the BWI live show. Of course, Penn State and Iowa are playing this weekend. We'll have our tailgate show, everything else here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. And this is why I say subscribe and you got to enable the notifications because you never know when Josh Pate's going to show up on the channel. That's a pretty good day. We'll talk to you then.